everyone. This is another episode of Timeless Dialogues, and we are here today discussing ministry relationships, in particular, long-term ministry relationships and the effects that they can have for you and your ministry. But before we dive into this important topic, I want to give a special shout out to one of our sponsors today. Today, we are being sponsored by Happle's Apples Beside the Big Apple. They exist to lower the cost and maximize the usefulness of apples and Apple products. Their motto is, "We steal them so you can peel them." They promise if you can get apples cheaper through the black market is because the distributor is one of their non-disclosed locations. So as we get in here today, we are going to discuss some very important topics. But before we do, I want to introduce our two guests. We've got Steve Woods, who looks like Sasquatch, and Brandon Clubb, that looks like Sasquatch with a little bit more melanin in his beard today. And we are going to really just discuss the reality that God has given us just a wonderful friendship for about 20 years now. And my name is Bill Roach, and we're just going to be going through this conversation today. So just introduce yourself real quick, where you're from, and what you're currently doing in ministry. Steve, you can go first.
All right. My name is Stephen Woods, and I've been serving as an elder at Refreshing Springs now for over 5 years, and just preparing to plant a church sometime in the near future. So just looking forward to that and whatever else the Lord has to do.
Brandon?
All right. Should I do it with the camera under my nose like Steve?
Please do.
Hi, my name is
Absolutely. Shut up.
My name is Brandon. My name is Brandon Clubb, and I'm an associate pastor in Meade, Kansas. Living the dream out here. So,
you know what I think is really the dream, and Brandon, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong here. I think living the dream is having a wonderful football game in which you almost lose in the last 12 seconds, come back to win,
seconds, get it right.
The Buffalo Bills.
That's right.
Steve, I don't know if you have any accolades with the Buffalo Bills or not.
Steve is one of those Tom Brady fans.
You are so evil. You're definitely not, you're not chosen. Sorry. Just so you know.
Right, yeah.
Well, Steve, you're so chosen that your mama named you Esau, man. So,
well,
you're that far gone, my friend. So what we're going to do here today is we're just going to try to get to know each other a little bit and help our audience to help get to know us a little bit. So what I want to do is just give a couple 15-second questions to you. So try to answer these in 15 seconds. So first of all, what is something you're curious about? Like, what are your hobbies? Like, what do you do in your free time? Both of you.
I got 7 kids. I don't have free time. So I don't even know what a hobby is. I know.
Boring life. Boring.
Yeah.
You got nothing. Exactly.
I got nothing. That's true. I got nothing.
All your time is what to spend. I would say I just basically in my spare time I read and just basically I've been focusing a lot more on leadership development and mentoring. So I've been going through different classes.
You said Brandon's life is boring. You just sit around and read all day, Steve?
I thought Steve was going to say like CrossFit.
Well, CrossFit.
He's developing the next gluten-free bread out of Buffalo.
That's right.
Try to fuel the Buffalo Bills so that they can beat Kansas City next time.
Listen, Brady does it now. He gluten-free.
So here's my second question real quick. Have either of you ever been Skype hunting before? If so, share your story real quick.
I've watched Steve Skype hunt.
Oh, Steve, have you been Skype hunting once? Did you ever go Skype hunting at Barclay College one time?
Oh, absolutely. I loved it.
So for those of you who don't know, Skype hunting is where you basically make up this idea of finding this Skype, which is this fake bird. And Steve, when we all went to Barclay College years ago, we took him like 2 miles out in the woods and we just left him there, but we had people planted around. I mean, when we mean we left him there, means we snuck back to the cars and drove back into town like several miles later. Steve's out there Here, Skype. Here, Skype. How'd that work out for you, buddy?
Well, you're a good liar, but it was pouring rain. It was a thunderstorm in your car, in your Skylark, to be exact, or whatever that Buick was. And it was like, I thought God was talking from heaven. And you're like, oh, no, this is nothing. You know, I'm like, oh, wonderful. Thanks a lot, Bill. You brought me out here to kill me.
Yeah, pretty much. Obviously, it didn't work. So here's something here real quick. Brandon, what did Steve give the homeless man in the parking lot in Pratt, Kansas at the Walmart? Man. You remember that? You remember this incident?
Vaguely.
We're pulling out of Pratt's Walmart and Steve sees this homeless man standing there, and it's like a 90-degree day out there. And what kind of food did he give to that homeless man?
Oh man,
Come on,
Steve. I guess like it's got to be like a vitamin.
Gave him yogurt. You remember
that? That's right. Yeah.
Hey, all the things to give to somebody that doesn't have a refrigerator on a 95-degree day in the middle of Kansas. Steve's out there giving the guy yogurt. Now, on the flip side,
before it gets lumpy.
Do you remember when we went to the clothing store in Pratt, Kansas? Do you remember the guy that came up to Brandon that day? Do you remember who it was? And two, do you remember what he said?
Oh man.
You could tell I'm dealing with a crowd that hasn't taken their medicine in a while.
Right. Yeah.
What did he say to Brandon?
I'll give you
Brandon, do you remember it?
Oh man. He saw my watch, and it was like a cheap Walmart clearance watch.
And he goes, "Is that a Rolex?" Didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, basically, he's like, "Is that a fossil?" I think he asked if it was a fossil. And he was like, and I told him, I was like, "No, it's just a Walmart knockoff." And he goes, "Oh, that is Thrifty Pimp."
Oh, he didn't just say it like, "Oh, that was Thrifty Pimp." He goes, "Oh, that was Thrifty Pimp right there."
You know what's funny though? Even funnier is literally like 2 weeks ago, walking around in JCPenney, the exact same watch in their jewelry counter. I almost bought it just so I could have it.
Just for the fun of it. So let's go on here. Let's really just kind of dive into this topic here, as we really just want to try to explain what is the value of long-term ministry relationships. So for those of you who don't know, each of us found our way to this small little college in Haviland, Kansas called Barclay College. And I found Barclay because a friend of mine had gone there. In fact, he was a former pastor of mine at the time. And he said, "You need to go to this college. It's out in the middle of nowhere. You'll absolutely love it." And I'll be honest, I got out there from a small town. And he was right. I absolutely loved it. And it's because at Barclay College, you forge friendships that last forever. So Brandon, how did you first hear of Barclay College? Like, how did it even come on your radar?
Because my mom worked there.
I didn't know your mom worked at Barclay.
Yeah, well, she quit. She quit the semester we all started. But that summer, she was her last summer there, and she was working in the up in the registrar office or something, not register, but like secretary and stuff. And
okay.
I needed a place to go, and I didn't want to go to Dodge City and study psychology. So I went to Barclay it was just going to be a semester to figure out what I wanted to do.
Steve, how did you figure out about Barclay? Like, how'd you hear about it?
So this is going to be really interesting. So I Google searched Bible colleges, right? And I'm just
and then
like,
you got a lottery ticket that said go to Barclay.
Right.
So then I'm like, oh, sweet. Like, this school looks great. You know, the way they have it presented on the website. I'm like, oh, wonderful. So I got in contact with Justin Kindle, and he's like, yeah, come on down to Barclay College. And I'm like, oh, wonderful. He's like, you're going to love it here. When I got down there, I felt like I was going into the woodshed. I was like, there's nothing but trees and there's no building.
Here's the funny thing. It really wasn't as much of a culture shock for Brandon and I, because we both came from these very rural, sort of small town places. Steve comes out of urban Buffalo, New York, didn't do his research at all, gets off the plane, thinks, well, this isn't that bad. Then they drove him 2.5 hours west of Wichita, and he ends up in the middle of a wheat field thinking, where did I go? So all the time, Steve was trying to get back to Pratt, trying to go to, let's go to the quick shop at 12 o'clock at night, because he was going stir crazy. He had no clue what to do out there. So Steve, let me ask you this. What's your first memory? Like, how did you first meet Brandon when you got out to Barclay?
So it was like, I don't know, like the second day when everybody was actually in their dorm rooms.
Did you say second date, Steve? I just got to clarify that real quick.
Second day.
Okay.
So second day, and all of a sudden, I'm getting up, going into the shower, and there's Brandon. I'm like, hey, how's it going? He's like, good. And I don't know what, I asked him where was something. He's like, you got to go. I think I asked him where the registrar's office was, because I was like, he goes, oh, you just got to go in that one main building. He's giving me the directions. And after that, dude, that was it.
No, that was the question to the other question.
Oh, give me the other question.
You were getting in the shower, man. And it's like, you look at me and you're like, hey, bro. And I was like, what? And you said, can you nair my back?
Oh no.
And you man. And like, I'm staring at a grizzly bear, and you give me this bottle of Nair. And so I put Nair. Like, I don't know why I did it.
Okay, guys, I gotta go. I can't associate with these guys anymore. Clearly, the hair that was on their backs transferred to their beards or something like that. Now, here's the thing. At the time, Barclay had like these showers that you could, share between a whole bunch of people. So you got to know people quite well through there. It's funny. I don't have that. I didn't have the, can you put Nair on my back story from Steve. I just remember running into you in the lobby down there, and you're like, hey, you want to go to Pratt and get some food? And I was like, okay, whatever. So mine was not as entertaining as that altogether. Now, one of the things that I remember, I want to see if we can get any of these. I know one of our favorite professors that we had there, well, Steve's gone, so he'll be back in a second. But I remember one of our favorite professors that we had there. His name was Herb Flinkman. Now, Steve, what's one of your favorite Herbisms that you remember at being at Barclay College?
Oh, man. I like the immediate retributive justice. That was, and the fuzzy end of the lollipop.
Yep, fuzzy end of the lollipop. However it came down to, you missed one and you would beg it. Well, I'm sorry, you got the fuzzy end of the lollipop. And Steve picked up that phrase and used it absolutely everywhere. If you're out there, we're at one of the basketball games, and the guy gets a brick from like the 3-point line. Well, that guy got the fuzzy end of the lollipop. And that was Steve's favorite line, probably from then until now. So what I want you to see is that Barclay College may have been a small school, but it's a place where you get to know people really well. And what I want to do in this next segment here is I want to go into some really specific questions about how our friendship has really just developed and been used by God over the years to strengthen our current ministry positions. So I'm just going to ask these to both of you, and I want both of you to answer, and then we'll just kind of dialogue about it as we're going through. So given sort of the doctrinal lapses in many churches, which really is this idea that people are watering down doctrine, they're turning away from doctrine, they're trying to make it weaker in many respects. How have both of you found our friendship forged over the years to be essential in maintaining your personal doctrinal integrity in your current ministries?
Well, I would say that in regards to that question, that it helped in a lot of ways, in the sense that, when we first got together, there was a lot of areas that I did not have a lot of understanding in. To be specific, I would, one in particular I could think of is concerning election and the will of God. And so by interacting with both of you, you both have kind of have strengthened has helped me to better understand those doctrines. And now they've been a part of me all my life. I mean, I'm able to defend them, and just firmly rooted in the convictions. And it's come through both of you in our relationship, that even through the ups and downs in my life, I've been able to go back to those doctrines, and they've helped me to persevere even now in ministry.
What about for you, Brandon?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Steve just said. I think, so I somehow through our time at Barclay, like, found the two guys who really cared about doctrinal integrity. And so that has been for me a stirring point for me, even where maybe there's doctrines that have come up that I didn't really know who to turn to. And I was able to call one of you two and have that dialogue, that conversation, because your desire was to have doctrinal integrity, just like my desire was. And so I knew I could call two guys who were going to search the scriptures, or at least have studied it based on scripture, who were going to give me that take on it. And so that has always been kind of just a place that I can go, regardless of what the doctrine or theology is, have you guys to bounce off of. That's going to help steer me. And so, I mean, it's just been, this friendship has been one that has in a lot of ways solidified certain things I do believe, and helped me to rethink other things that there was a stronger scriptural stance on.
I found the exact same thing. Both of you have really just been an inspiration for convictions in doctrinal matters. I think there was always times, where you're sorting through different theological issues, and you need people to push back on you with it. But also, whenever you're facing a situation, you want to know that somebody has your back. You want to know that you're not the only one who believes something.
Right.
You know that when the fight happens, you've got other people in your foxhole. And I will tell you what, these two guys, Brandon and Steve, have been in the foxhole with me for years. And I remember so many you have the debates that you have in the dorm rooms, but then you start getting into ministry, and the things that you run into, in particular, the things that you just don't expect, the stuff that just, they're not on the radar, that are starting to hit today. I can turn to these guys and we can work through it with biblical convictions. And what I found is that not only did it help form my doctrine, it's helped to preserve my doctrine. I mean, obviously it's founded upon the word of God, but having close friendships is something that's just lasted for literally decades now. And it's been just absolutely priceless for everything that I've been able to do. And I think you guys have found the same thing. I know you two have had other conversations and you've dealt with other issues in your ministry context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can tell that Steve's into it today over there, right?
Oh, yes.
All right, on that note. So what I want to look at here is this, is that we know that ministry has its highs and its lows, just like life has its highs and its lows. And one of the big things that we need in that is not only encouragement, but discernment to get through. So how have you found that our friendship, and this could be friendships that other people have, maybe something they've had in their own lives, has brought both discernment to endure these highs and lows and the ability to endure these highs and lows? Maybe give an example of it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that always happens in the course of ministry is in those highs and lows, and especially in the lows, is the question of like, am I even supposed to be here? Right? Like, I've tried this and I'm not getting anywhere, and I feel like I'm hurting this area more than I'm helping, and like, it's like, am I even supposed to be here? Having you guys as people who support me in this friendship has always been a place I can go to where it kind of helps me to step away from the situation and see it from an outside perspective, where like I'm so involved in this ministry that there's so many things I'm missing, and I can call you guys up and give you a rundown of everything that's going on. And then you can remind me of truths throughout scripture, or the way God has worked in my life through things I've shared with you that solidify and help me understand, no, this is your calling, right? Like, God has called you here. Just because it's not working out this way, or just because it's not changing the way you would like to see it changed, doesn't mean you should throw in the towel and you're done. And that has been very helpful, because I look at other guys that I know and I've met through different friendships at different colleges, they're not in ministry anymore. And we didn't have that kind of relationship. You two are one of the guys that have been in ministry from the time we left college, that you've stayed in ministry. Conversations that we've had with one another has helped to keep us in ministry. So it has been like just a anchor and support to keep me in ministry and to encourage me in times that are really low.
I found that it was an issue of discerning whether or not to even go into ministry, or even what type of ministry to go into. And I mean, I remember we used to go and travel to different places around Kansas. In fact, where you're at right now,
Yep.
Brandon, I still remember Meade, Kansas, Dalton Family Gang hideout and all that fun stuff that's out
Yep.
there. But I still remember going out to that church years ago. I mean, we drove all the way out there and
Mhm.
we spoke, and I'll be honest, it was kind of weird because I'm going out there, but I knew these guys are riding all the way out there with me. They have
Right.
my backs, and it's a confidence issue. You
Yeah.
need the discernment on whether or not you can do it and whether or not it's something you should do for years going ahead. And I also remember going with Steve to that church in Pratt, Kansas. You remember that? You remember the first time we heard Steve preach,
Yeah.
Brandon? You remember that?
Oh,
Yep.
God.
And now here's the thing. Steve was out of his element in Western Kansas. Now, for most of you who don't know this, Steve was saved in a Black Pentecostal holiness church. I mean, they were hooping and hollering in the midst of it. And that's how Steve first learned how to preach. And I still remember the first time we went, I was, in many ways, I was kind of blown away by it because Steve had picked that up. That was what was modeled for him. And I'm not putting it down at all. I mean, I'm not making fun of Steve at all.
Right.
Yeah, we actually are, but we're just not letting him know. But we're not trying to make fun of Steve at all. But just being able to go and encourage him and say, you know, we're going to go watch this man preach. Do you remember that, Steve? You remember that time when we went to Pratt?
Yes, I remember that. So just like it was yesterday, that was that was really.
All right,
That was
Steve, we
amazing.
got to do it. We got to do it. This is for Nels Carlson out there, who I know will probably listen to this. Steve, can you give us a 15-second sermon of how you would preach on a day like that?
On a day like that, let me see it.
Moses being liberated from the promised land. Come on, go. And how it's fulfilled in Jesus. Come on. Do it, Steve. Come on.
Oh, Lord, man.
Put you on the spot. Preach, pray, or whatever at any time.
Man. Yeah, I remember going to the church in Pratt. I think I preached this. The title of the message was Turn or Burn.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Makes
I
sense.
said, you know, it's something because you're sitting there in the church and you're doing whatever you want to do. But I stopped by to tell you tonight, it's time to turn to Jesus. And if you die in your sin tonight, the Bible said in hell you will lift up your eyes. Yes, and that was
Yes, sir.
I remember when
50
you guys
minutes of Steve coming out upon us today to rise, and we loved it today. But see, here's
That's
the thing,
right.
is that in the midst of that, you know, what we had to do was learn how to deal with the new ministry context there, one that Steve was deeply immersed in, but also in the reverse side of it, Steve learned a new ministry context himself. We had to put discernment into how do you actually do ministry in these different types of situations. And, you know, we had such a friendship that we could look at it and go, hey, bud, you did that great today. I want to encourage you. You're doing really well with that. Or we could even say things like, man, I don't know if that's the right context for something like that. And I'm not saying you did something wrong there, Steve, but it's that having that kind of friendship is worthwhile. And also, you know, you face different type of ministry feedback. Like sometimes you get pushback from churches. And I remember one church that I spoke at, and they were kind of looking for a new pastor, and I really didn't want to be their pastor. And it was fairly close to campus. And I just remember that it was some lady in the church, and I brought up some doctrinal issue, and I was very hard on the issue because the Bible is very strong on the issue. And that lady published an article about me in the local little newspaper there. and you guys were laughing your heads off about it, but it was
Yeah.
kind of discouraging. I mean, I saw it as a badge of honor in one sense for standing up for doctrinal integrity. And I
Right.
still to this day would preach the exact same kinds of sermons. But it's
Mhm.
those kinds of things that you just, money just doesn't buy that kind of friendship,
Right.
those
Yeah.
kinds of enduring things. And that's one of the issues that I think evangelicals need to look at with sort of the rise of online education, that you don't get those kind of relationships. I mean, if you haven't seen Steve trying to get Nair on his back, I mean, you haven't lived. If you haven't ridden in the car with Steve when there's lightning bolts coming down from the big
Yeah.
thunderstorms, and see this man shaking in fear more than the people in the pews with his sermons, you have not lived, my friends. But that's my point, is that these are the kind of ministry things where you learn discernment going in. And we've all faced this. We have hardships in our families, we have hardships in our jobs, and we need the discernment. And I just really want to say I'm thankful for these two guys. And here's the beauty about it. Going through Barclay, I still have friends at Barclay that just aren't on this today that I can call. I mean, I think of people like Michael Vance or Nels Carlson, or a host of other people. And that's something that I think modern day ministry cannot give up. The beauty of being able to go and spend several years in a place and allowing God to forge both your character and your convictions, it's priceless for the sake of ministry.
Yep.
Now, another thing that we've looked at here is that, we've kind of discussed how relationships have grown over the years, but here's another thing that we've seen is all of us eventually actually went on to different colleges and we made different friendships, but those friendships didn't seem to endure like this one, like the ones that we've had here. So what do you think it is? Why do you think this friendship has continued to be strengthened and to endure over the last 2 decades? Just think about that. 2 decades, guys, almost 20 years at that point. What is it? I mean, help me figure this out.
I have thought about it, and it's like I don't know, because even the other guys that I went to college, those different colleges with, I've reached out to, and sometimes I don't hear anything back. I mean, it just is a kind of a dead avenue. And I don't know what it is. I think there's a genuine caring, and if I can use the word, love that we have for one another that I don't have with those other guys. Not that I wouldn't like to, or that I wouldn't want to. It's just like I'll go, if I go a month or so without talking, I'll think, it'll just hit me one day, like, I wonder how Steve's doing. I wonder what Steve's up to, right? Or I wonder what Bill's doing. I wonder how everything's going in his life, that I don't necessarily have with those other guys. But I've thought about it. It's like, I don't really know, other than there's genuine care and love and concern that we have for one another. Other than that, I don't really know.
Steve, what do you think?
Brandon's hitting the nail on the head, because I don't know. It's just like, just the way we met, and we just kept, staying in contact with each other. There was that genuineness from the beginning, but also, it's going through some of the storms of life together.
Yeah.
It's the times when, I'm sitting there and back home, and have my father pass away, and you both being there. Times where you guys have called me during times when we're celebrating children coming into the world, and the low points of ministry, times where I've talked to you, Bill, and you've said to me things that, hey, Steve, I just want to encourage you about this area of your life that I think that you really need to, and it was your genuine concern. It wasn't about pleasing my emotions or making me feel a certain way. It was, no, this is what you really need to consider, because you are, this is something that I, speaking the truth in love. And the same with Brandon. There's times where I've been so down, and I'll call him up and say, man, and he's like, Steve, this is not about you. If it becomes about you, it's no longer about the Lord. And it's in those moments that you say, wow, a big eye opener, and a much needed one. And so I think that, by the sovereign hand of God, he's brought us together from
I think
different
that's
parts.
exactly what it is. I think it's really just God's sovereign providence that has kept this friendship going for so many years. I mean, that's the ultimate cause of it. It's God himself. And I think a secondary reason of it is that Steve's mind kind of operates like a lazy Susan, and he's only got like 3 phone numbers in his phone. So
Yeah.
he's going to get around to you fairly quickly there.
Right.
But I agree. I mean, that's the thing is I remember, at one point, I think Brandon was going to Florida. Steve was going back to Buffalo, and I was staying at Barclay. And I remember sitting in a dorm room, and we just kind of made this pact, like, we're just not going to compromise.
Yeah.
No ifs, ands, or buts. And we just promised then and there to hold one another accountable.
Yeah.
And I've tried to uphold that over the years. There's a lot of people that make those kinds of things and they come and go, but God has never let that promise fail. That's something that I found that has just always endured. And I don't think we would have got it if it weren't for that season. And the funny thing is that it really wasn't that long of a season.
Yeah.
Really, if you think about it. And it was just a couple of years in there. And Brandon moved off to Florida and he would come back during breaks, but it was just something that it doesn't really matter how long that initial time was. God really used it for his glory in that sense. Now, here's something that I want us to kind of look at here is, what is something in life that you failed at, and how did you overcome that challenge? Like, trying to be very realistic, like showing our humanity in a sense. And how did you overcome that challenge? And let's be very specific. Maybe how did a friendship like this overcome that challenge? So maybe a ministry failure or something like that. And obviously we're not, glorying in sin, but something where you're like, man, and a friendship like this can help you endure the next stage of life in that regard.
Yeah.
Steve, I know you lost that football game last week, but you can't use that example, just so you know.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Okay, good. We just wanted to help you with that.
Oh man.
As you ask that question, it's like, I can't look at, by God's grace, one like just big failure. I've had little things throughout my ministry, throughout my time, that by God's grace didn't go any further, but used you guys, just having a place to go and share what I was struggling with and have that accountability that God used to kind of put the brakes on things or put it in perspective, and has allowed me to experience, even in the midst of failure, God's grace and mercy through him and through you guys that keeps me going. But it's really hard for me to put like my finger on one just epic failure, so to speak.
And that's actually a thing of God's grace, because if you have people that are in your life that can say, hey bud, the cliff is right there, pump the brakes, that's really God's providence and grace in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all had hiccups. We've had things where we've messed up here or messed up there, but they haven't been so royal to the point that it just disrupts and totally disqualifies any of us for ministry.
Right.
And that's one thing that I've always found beneficial, is that, again, when you're in the true reality of ministry, having people to rely upon is priceless. So Steve, what about you?
Well, I remember a time when I was part of this one church, and I remember telling you guys about it, and you were like, you just need to get out of there, like just point blank. Both of you said the same thing, and I was just heartbroken because I'm the kind of guy where if I'm with you, I'm with you, and I had already spoken to this pastor and said, hey, I'm behind you, and and then all of a sudden it was like I had to make a choice. It was hard, it was tough, but I learned through that when I did eventually just say, what, enough is enough, I have to walk away, enduring the pain of that, because from an integral standpoint, when you give somebody a word, you don't want to, you don't want to back down from that. And you don't want to, but then you realize that, wait, there's something bigger at stake here.
Yeah.
And when you guys helped me to realize that, I was able to walk away and say, all right, this is a learning experience. Even though it was painful for me, it made me become more mature in ministry.
So how do you think our friendship over the years has helped you grow in your relationship with Christ?
Man, it has helped me grow tremendously.
Right.
I mean, I've learned so many aspects of life and, as being a believer and even in ministry, that's just so priceless. I mean, you can't read it out of a textbook to get it.
Right.
You have.
The thing is, like, how's it not helped me grow in my relationship with Christ? Like, how many times have I called you guys up and been like, I need prayer in this. Like, I just need you to think about me and pray about me for this. And then to watch you guys in the way God moves in your life and see the successes you have, or the way, like even that, I remember that church, you pulling out of that and seeing God work in your life and where he's taking you now is like, with that genuine care and concern and love, is like, I get to rejoice with you, even though you're thousands of miles away. I'm rejoicing in your ministry, Bill, as I watch you, and you take on different jobs in the ministry and the success you've had with the books and things. It's like, I get to rejoice with you and see those things. And I mean, just in every way possible, my relationship with Christ has benefited from the fact that I know you guys.
I would agree. It's so much of the same thing. So much of life is having people that sort of kind of like know where you've come from and where you've been and where you want to go. And I don't think any of our desires have really changed in the prospects for ministry. Now, it doesn't always mean that we've gotten every ministry position, right, or different things along those lines, but having somebody say, that might not be the best job for you, or that would be a good ministry position for you, or seeing one of you have success in ministry, it really is. I mean, we have great joy in that. And it's just something that, again, I keep using this phrase, it's priceless. And it all comes back to a little time there in Haviland, Kansas.
Right.
Now, what I want to do before we start looking at a few final things here is I want to change directions real quick and spice things up a little bit here. So what I want to do is I want you guys to tell me one funny thing about Haviland, Kansas that you remember, and your favorite prank against maybe Michael Vance or one of the roommates that were right there that we had over the years. Brandon, you'll go first.
Oh man.
Yeah, to put you
Haviland, I mean, I can't say too much funny about Haviland. Remind me of where I grew up, small town, so for me it was just another place. I remember probably the most with Michael Vance pushing that poor guy into bush after bush after bush. If we saw a bush, Michael Vance was getting pushed in that bush. And I think he probably holds animosity in his life to me to this day.
He now walks around bushes like an extra 5 feet.
He's like looking behind him when he goes by bushes. So that was one. The other prank that sticks out of my head is like the forbidden prank.
Yeah, the forbidden one, the one of which we speaketh not.
Yeah, I know. Like even now, I don't know if we are able to talk about it, but me and Bill know what it is, and it shall remain nameless.
You think Steve will ever figure it out?
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
Steve, what about you? What's your favorite memory about Haviland, Kansas, and a prank or something that happened?
The favorite, I would say, Haviland, Kansas, there wasn't really anything funny that stuck out, but the greatest was the Friday night football games up at the school. That was wonderful. I mean, that helped you get through the semester real nice. But the prank, I remember Nick Wooster was in class. Nick Wooster was in class, and I got a phone call that someone wired me some money. So I went and I took his keys I drove all the way to Frank, Kansas with his
I
truck.
remember that. Yeah.
And he was man, he was hotter than fish grease.
He didn't,
That
he
dude
didn't
was
know.
so
He
red.
didn't know you took his car.
That's right. Man, he was so mad. I even put gas in the thing. I was like, hey, I filled your tank. He's like, don't do that ever again. And blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh, man. But yeah, that was funny.
You know, it's one of the things that I always remember about Haviland, Kansas. It was a good memory for me, as I have said this, there's no better place in the United States that I've been. This is all personal preference. There's no better place in the United States for such a beautiful sunset as Haviland, Kansas. I mean, it is flat. It's so flat. You can watch your dog run away for like 2 weeks out there flat. But I just remember it's just being one of these kind of communities where, I mean, I truly just found the glory of God displayed in that area. But I think, oh man, I've got so many funny pranks that I can think of that happened. One of my favorites, it was with Nick, because Nick was my first roommate. And Nick basically just had to endure that period of time. So I got this hot idea one time where I was like, all right, I'm going to get Nick. So what I did is I changed every clock that he could possibly see. So I think I fast forwarded them all by like a good hour and a half. So, I mean, his phone, his computer, his alarm clock, the clocks in the hallway. And I had it go off so that he got up at like something like 5:30 in the morning for his 8 o'clock class, but all the clocks were set like he normally would have. And he got up and he went to breakfast and they weren't open. He went to class and they weren't open. And about the time he's about ready to come back from class, everybody was getting up and he's, man, nobody showed up today. What's going on here? But my all-time favorite, I think we went to either Pratt, but I think it was probably Wichita. And Vance got this huge bag of flour. Do you remember that? Were you guys there for this one? Maybe this was when you guys left. Vance got, I mean, we're not talking like a 10-pound bag. We're talking Vance got like a 50-pound bag of flour. And it was just like, here we go. So what we would do is people would, you know, they would be taking showers and you'd see this evil hand slip through full of flour and they'd throw it on you and you'd have all this doughy flour that would hit you. But that's not the best. The best was Michael Vance put a bunch of flour in Tara's car. We love you, Tara, but this was a great Michael Vance prank at this moment. And he put it all over her car and she came in and she thought it was Nathaniel that did the prank. So you hear it, she's wearing high heel shoes and you hear this click, 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 click. And she goes right up to Nathaniel and Vance is dying laughing. And I had no clue what was going on with this. And Vance stands up and goes, it was me. And I was like, why did you say anything? You could have got away with it, man. But she rightly ripped into him for that. But again, that's the kind of stuff that goes on with Barclay College. And there's so many great things with great people. And, you know, the pranks come and go, but in all honesty, you know, they were good, you know, in good heart and good spirits and with fun. And that's one of the things that I absolutely just loved about Barclay. It was those kinds of times, you know, you're growing up, you're kids in many respects,
right?
But you're figuring out life. So let's finish with this just a little bit here. So I know that there's a lot of things that we could say and there's a lot of things that we can do, but what's one thing that you want our audience to take away, something that they can pick up and something that they can learn from our conversation here today? Steve.
Well, number one, hold fast to your relationship, you know, take it seriously and be intentional on, you know, those relationships that you've developed. You know, I don't care what happens in your life, what you're going through. It's so important that those that mean the most to you, you will make time. They will become a priority. Like Brandon said, we could go weeks, sometimes months without talking. But as soon as we think about each other, we're either texting each other, calling each other, staying in contact, or we see something on social media where you might be hosting an event, Bill, or Brandon, maybe preaching a sermon online, and we're there to comment, we're there to encourage. And we know that when we're going through situations, whether it's high or low, we can call each other at any time of the day or night. Keep that, so if anything, be intentional and guard your relationships, because life has a way of getting so busy, but don't become so busy where you lose that value, and you lose that, because relationships are priceless.
What about you, Brandon?
I would echo that. I mean, it's the same thing. It's I think I would remind people, surround yourself with people who genuinely love the Lord, and their number one priority is Christ and their relationship with him, because that will inevitably bleed into your relationship that you have with them. I mean, that's the reality. Is I think we're so strong in our bond because I know first and foremost you guys prioritize Christ and his kingdom over everything else. And so I don't have to worry about you guys catering to my feelings or emotions. I know that when you hold me accountable, it's going to be for my best interest to the glory of God. And so that would be my thing, is hold close to those guys who love the Lord and form relationships with them.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And really thank you for coming on here today. We make this not to like boast in ourselves. We make it a video like this because we want to encourage people. In particular, we realize the people that are probably going to watch this the most are going to be people connected to Barclay. And I really just want to say thank you to Barclay College, to its faculty and to its staff and to the students and to everyone that's kind of poured into all of us over the years. I really have a soft spot in my heart for Barclay College. It's a place that I love. I've always said that I don't know if I ever want to move back to a rural place again, but if Barclay College was a place that God ever called me to again, I know each of us would enjoy it. Steve might try to bring like a mall and some extra restaurants.
That's
and
right.
Chips and salsa.
Nick Wooster's cars so they can go back and forth to Pratt, Kansas. Don't turn the air conditioning on, by the way. Remember that.
Oh, that's right.
But it's just truly just an honor to know you guys, and I just really appreciate it. And as we sort of finish here, I just want to give one final word to both of you. Any final closing comments?
Oh, I thought like you were going to give us a final word. You were going to leave us with some sort of wisdom.
Punk, come on.
Well, one thing, Bill, that we didn't get to bring out was this with Brandon. One thing you and I can both agree on: Brandon has had more pastoral opportunities than Charles Spurgeon and John Calvin in their lifetime. Brandon walks
Brandon sneezes and he can like find ministry positions. So.
Thank you. Exactly. That's all I got.
Oh, you got. No.
Most people don't know this, but if you look at this video here and you look at Steve, one final comment is that if you're ever looking for sort of Sasquatch lookalikes, he's your man. I mean, he's got the beard coming there and all the rest.
You're a hater.
Exactly.
Oh,
well, guys, thank you. I really appreciate it. And again, I want to thank our special sponsor for today, Happle's Apples. Beside the Big Apple, they exist to lower the cost and maximize the usefulness of apples and Apple products. Their motto is, we steal them, so you peel them. They promise if you can get apples cheaper through the black market, it's probably because that distributor is one of their non-disclosed locations. And with that, we thank you for listening in here today.